There's something uncomfortable you need to hear, especially if you've ever walked away from an argument feeling drained. You didn't lose because you lacked logic. You didn't lose because you weren't smart enough. You lost because you reacted the wrong way. Think about a recent moment. Someone cut you off, talked over you, forced you to explain more, speak faster, push harder, and somehow they won. Not because they were right, but because they pulled you into their game. You thought you were defending your point, but in reality you were slowly losing control. And here's the dangerous part. These mistakes are subtle. You don't notice them while they're happening. Only after the conversation ends, when all that's left is frustration or regret. In this video, we're not starting with clever comebacks. We're starting with something more important. 5 common mistakes that quietly make you lose every argument. Because once you see them clearly, you'll understand why the more you try to say, the less power you actually have. Most people walk into an argument with a flawed assumption from the start that the goal is to win. So they try to say more, explain more clearly, prove their point all the way through. But here's a truth most people never stop to notice. Most arguments aren't about finding what's right. They're about gaining control. The other person isn't really listening to you. They're waiting for an opening. They're nudging you into an emotional state where you're easiest to steer. And the moment you start reacting, speaking faster, tightening up, getting defensive, you've already given them what they want. It's not that your reasoning suddenly became weaker. It's that you stepped out of control. That's why the louder person often seems to win in the moment, not because they're right, but because they've made you lose yourself. As Epictetus once said, it's not events that disturb us, but the way we interpret them. In other words, the moment you react on impulse, you've handed control of your mind to someone else. Marcus Aurelius compared the inner self to a rock. Waves may crash against it, but they cannot move it. And Seneca warned that when you speak in anger, you'll end up saying things you'll later regret. The pattern here is clear. Power doesn't come from what you say. It comes from whether you can stay grounded within yourself. And most of the time, we don't even realize we're losing that ground, not because the other person is stronger, but because we keep repeating the same familiar mistakes. So what exactly are those mistakes? Mistake number 1. You try to speak louder to regain control. When someone cuts you off, when they talk louder, faster, more aggressively, what's your instinct? You raise your voice too. You try to jump in. You speed up your words as if saying more faster will help you take back control. But in that moment, you've already lost, because you've stepped into their arena where volume matters more than reason and chaos is used as a tool to dominate. You think you're defending your point, but you're letting emotion take the lead. And here's the irony: the louder you get, the less weight your words carry. People who truly control the situation don't need to raise their voice. They control the pace. They stay composed, and that's what makes others adjust to them. So instead of trying to win through volume, pause just for a beat and say something simple but decisive. I don't need to raise my voice to be right. That's not a counterattack. It's how you step out of the game without losing your ground. Mistake number 2. You try to defend yourself against attacks. When someone mocks you, when they throw a sarcastic comment at you in front of others, what do you feel? A bit irritated, a bit triggered, and almost instantly you want to explain. You want to clarify. You want to correct the misunderstanding. You want to prove that you're not what they're implying. But in that moment, you've stepped into the trap. Because people who attack you aren't looking for truth. They're looking for a reaction. They want you to stumble. They want you to get defensive. They want you to put yourself in a position where you have to prove your worth. And the moment you do that, you've accepted their rules. An insult only has power if you take it in. If you don't, it goes back to where it came from. People who are truly grounded don't rush to defend themselves. They don't absorb what doesn't belong to them. They look straight ahead, stay calm, and say something simple. The way you're speaking says more about you than it does about me. No attack, no defense, just a reflection. And in that moment, everything shifts. Their words lose weight because they no longer have anything to hold on to. And you don't need to prove anything at all. Mistake number 3. You keep arguing even after respect is gone. There are conversations that aren't really conversations anymore. The other person keeps interrupting you. They twist your words. They raise their voice, speed things up, and force you to keep chasing just to explain yourself. And you stay. You keep trying to finish your point. You keep hoping that if you're clear enough, patient enough, they'll understand. But the truth is, they don't want to understand. They're pulling you into a loop. You speak, they distort it. You correct, they push it further. And the longer you stay in that loop, the more control you lose. The real mistake isn't what you say. It's that you keep speaking, in a space where respect no longer exists. Because the moment you choose to continue, you're silently accepting how they treat you. People who are grounded don't try to save a conversation like that. They change the conditions for it to exist. They pause, they look directly, and they say something simple: we can talk when we can do it with respect. No pleading, no long explanation, just a boundary. And in that moment, the axis of the conversation shifts. It's no longer about who's right or wrong, but whether this conversation is even worth continuing. Mistake number 4. You don't walk away when the conversation turns toxic. There's a moment very clear, but most of us ignore it. It's when you realize the other person is no longer listening. They're not curious. They don't want to understand. They just want to win, even if it costs your respect. And yet, you stay. You think, maybe just one more point. Maybe if I explain it better. Maybe if they finally get it. So you keep going. Not because you have something new to say, but because you're hoping for a fair ending. But the truth is, you will never find fairness in a conversation fueled by conflict. The longer you stay, the more drained you become. The more you speak, the more likely you are to say something you'll regret. The mistake isn't in what you say, it's that you don't leave at the right time. People who have self-control understand this deeply. They don't try to fix a broken conversation. They end it calmly, decisively. I'm not going to continue this conversation. No anger, no drama, no permission needed, just a decision. And in that moment, you reclaim what matters most: your energy and your peace. Mistake number 5. You try to make others agree with you. Not every argument comes from hostility. Sometimes it's friends, co-workers, even family. They're not shouting at you, but they keep pushing back. They analyze, they challenge, they apply pressure until you start second-guessing yourself. And then you do what feels natural. You explain more, you add more reasoning, you try harder to bring them to your side. It sounds reasonable, but that's where the trap is. Not everyone needs to be convinced, and not every difference needs to be resolved. The more you try to change someone's mind, the more you lock yourself into a battle with no end. The mistake isn't that you're wrong, it's that you believe they have to agree with you. People who are grounded understand something simple. You can respect someone without abandoning your position. They don't argue endlessly, they don't try to win. They just say calmly, "That's your view, I respect it, but I don't share it." And they stop there. No tension, no confrontation, just a clear boundary between listening and losing yourself. If you look closely, these 5 mistakes aren't isolated moments. They're 5 ways you gradually lose control step by step. Mistake 1, you get pulled into emotion. Mistake 2, you get pulled into defense. Mistake 3, you get pulled into a manipulative loop. Mistake 4, you stay trapped in a toxic exchange. Mistake 5, you get caught in the need for agreement. And the corrections are just as clear. Lower the intensity instead of escalating. Reflect instead of attacking. Set the standard instead of tolerating. Walk away instead of trying to fix it. Hold your position instead of seeking validation. But there's one thing you need to remember. It's not these phrases that create power. It's the state behind them. If you're still angry, your words will turn into attacks. If you're still afraid, your words will sound like weakness. Only when you're truly calm do your words become a boundary. When you step back and look at it clearly, one thing stands out. You don't lose arguments because you lack answers. You lose because you react in ways that make you lose control. These 5 mistakes, if unnoticed, repeat themselves every day at work, at home, in the most ordinary conversations. But once you correct them, you don't need to say more, and you don't need to defeat anyone. You just need to hold your ground. And in that moment, everything shifts. People begin to choose their words more carefully around you, not because you overpower them, but because you're no longer someone they can pull into their game. If you recognize yourself in any of these mistakes, choose just one and apply it in your very next conversation. You can share in the comments which mistake do you fall into most often. And if you want to keep sharpening how you think, how you respond, and how you stay grounded in everyday situations, subscribe and stay with me for the next videos.